ended up sustaining the
The
beating
injury.
that was meant for me.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's what caused me to think, someone in this house is going to die.
Yeah.
And at 16 years of age, all I knew was that I could not remain in this environment. And so you have to understand that literally from probably about the age of 12, 13, as I was developing, and you know, you're in America and you get into trouble anyway for getting curious about things. But you know, it was a very difficult dynamic, and then the abuse started to happen with me. And so we had, you know, just so many different things. But when that happened, it was a wake-up call that I wanted to live. And I was so burdened seeing what was happening to my mom, but I felt like if she wouldn't leave, maybe if I left, she would leave. Because me being her baby girl, I felt like I could make an impact. And eventually it did. But before it got to that point, I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was a homeschool student, and that's where you take your education at home. And so I was very resentful for that. I wanted to be a normal girl, you know, teenager, involved in all the fun things in school, but I didn't have that story. And so basically, I had met a man on a plane. I was going to visit friends back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is neighboring Texas. Oklahoma is neighboring Texas. And we exchanged numbers. This was in the early 90s, so there was no cell phone.
How old are you this time?
I was 16.
16, okay.
And so I ended up keeping in contact with him.
What prompted you to take his number?
Well, first of all, at 16, you're, you know, if you were like me, you were just a little...
A teenager?
Teenager, you know, you're curious.
You're curious, yeah.
But we just got into a casual conversation. He was 27 years of age.
Was he next to you?
He was sitting next to me on the plane.
Yeah.
So we got into a casual conversation, and I did not have wisdom, so I began to tell him my problems with my father. Problem number one.
All right.
So he said, don't worry. I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Anything you need, if you need a place to stay, my home is open to you. And so when we go to the event that happened with my father, then I immediately thought, I'm going to run away.
Yeah.
And I'm going to Atlanta, Georgia. And so that's exactly what I did.
What happened?
And I had worked 3 part-time jobs to make enough money. I was working at a newspaper called the Dallas Weekly Newspaper. It's a African-American publication. At the time, it was the largest in that area.
Yeah.
So I was a contributing writer. You know, I was a brilliant little girl, according to my mom. I wouldn't call myself brilliant, but you know, I was just an average 16-year-old young lady who had hopes, dreams, and aspirations like anyone. And then this interruption, right? So I move. There's in America, Greyhound bus is a service really well known, and I purchased a Greyhound bus ticket with my last $119. I will never forget the price because I'd never paid for anything that cost that amount. And I went from Dallas, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. And I did not, because of the abuse that I had, we did not have aunts and uncles and cousins. My father was very controlling and isolated my mother, which is very common when you're in a domestic violence situation. So we never grew up with that type of connection to where our auntie can call and say, how is Keeya, how is Robert, how are they doing? We didn't have that. And so all of these made the perfect storm for what was to happen by the time I get to Atlanta.
Okay. Such a sad story. But then again, in this period where you've decided to run away from home, first of all, so you leave your mom at the verge of your dad as well. So your mom kept on hoping that this guy will change every day, or why was she still there? And when you ran away, was your vision and mission to just get her out of the abusive environment, or why did you even run away? Fine, you were rescuing yourself, but what about the rest?